Hello and welcome to Why Wasn't It Better? I am your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
We have a very special return guest with us here today, back for his second official Batman movie, Ivan Calixto. Welcome back to the podcast, sir.
Thank you for having me, guys. I love all Batman things all the time, even the ones with the bat nipples on them. Like, I'm always down to talk Batman.
You a big Schumacher fan?
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Do you have a favorite like comic version of Batman? Like, do you like blue cowl? Do you like black cowl?
Oh boy.
Here we go.
Well, I'm glad you guys carved out these next 15 minutes for me to talk about comic book Batman. No, honestly, I'm very partial to Grant Morrison Batman, which
Okay.
I'll leave that at that, because he goes from the range of like really loony Batman to like traditionally dark, spooky Batman. So
Right.
he covers my range. So there you go. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I'm an edgy teen. I love Batman Beyond.
Oh,
I liked that show. Big fan.
Fantastic show. Is that a good segue to the movie that we're covering today?
I think it is. We're covering a Batman movie that came out in 1993.
ooh, I was
But
one.
before we get into that, I have a very important announcement because there was another movie that came out in 1993 that I just found out today they're remaking, and it comes out this year. Anton,
Ooh.
it's Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger. What a legend of a film.
You familiar with that, Ivan?
I am not. I am drawing a blank.
Have you ever
brother.
watched Ace Ventura? Ace Ventura
Yes.
2, When Nature Calls. You remember that scene in the opening where he's trying to save, was it like a lemur
It's
from
a ferret.
a ferret from falling,
Yes.
and he's not able to. And the how do I put it? The tension of that scene and the utter turmoil that Jim Carrey had on his face as the ferret fell. That is a parody of this film. And if that captured the parody of that film, well, let me tell you, the original film is quite a ride.
Got it. Okay, so Cliffhanger 1993. I gotta watch that tonight.
Sylvester Stallone. John
Oh.
Lithgow plays the bad guy. Come on.
Sly Stallone. You should have started with that. I'm in.
Let me even sell it to you better. Die Hard on a Mountain.
Okay.
The theme, the film's tagline is "Hang On." Come on.
That pretty on the nose, but you know what? I will reserve all judgments until after I've seen it. Now I have
Yeah.
to watch this movie.
It's,
Well, then
it's
let's- oh, sorry.
spectacularly cheesy and amazing.
And who's in it? Who's in the reboot?
Yeah, the reboot.
It stars Lily James, we like her,
Right?
and Pierce Brosnan, who I guess is playing the bad guy, but I don't know for sure.
Good for you, Pierce Brosnan. He's been racking it up lately, just like getting those like Netflix deals, and now I don't know who's distributing this or who's producing this.
I'm not sure who's producing it.
I'm gonna guess Amazon.
I'm assuming it's not gonna be good, but you never know.
The last like film from that era that I saw the reboot for was Roadhouse that had Conor McGregor in it.
It wasn't good, right?
No, it was terrible.
Right. Sounds about right. But anyway, I just wanted to inform both of you and any of our listeners, if they weren't aware, there's a Cliffhanger remake coming.
Boom.
August 28, 2026.
Yep. So-
Move over, Odyssey. There's a bigger film this year.
Yeah, if there's one film that you see in theaters this summer, let it be the Cliffhanger remake. Which is interesting because for years there was a Cliffhanger sequel kind of in development hell. So it seems like they just decided to remake it rather than make a sequel to it. I don't know, whatever. But that's not what we're talking about today.
Mm-mm.
When you look at the long history of Batman animation, there are dozens of these films by now. You have to ask, why is Mask of the Phantasm the one that people still talk about? Why this one when DC has been churning out animated Batman for 30 years? Batman Mask of the Phantasm was released on Christmas 1993 by Warner Brothers Animation, Dong Yang Animation, and Spectrum Animation. It was directed by Eric Radomski and Bruce Timm. Shout out to Bruce Timm. The screenplay was written by Alan Burnett, Paul Dini. Shout out to Paul Dini. Martin Pasco and Michael Reeves, featuring the voices of Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, Dana Delaney, Hart Bachner, Abe Vigoda, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., Stacy Keach, Bob Hastings, and Robert Costanzo. The budget was $6 million. That is $13.4 million adjusted for inflation. and the box office was only $5.8 million. That is $13 million adjusted for inflation. It has an 83% Rotten Tomato score. The film follows Batman as he reconciles with a former lover, Andrea Beaumont, and he faces a mysterious vigilante, the titular Phantasm, who, by the way, is unnamed in this film. They never say the word Phantasm. They just leave it up for you, the viewer, to figure out. Ivan, as today's guest, everybody knows that you're a huge Batman fan at this point, but why did you want to be on this episode and talk about Mask of the Phantasm?
Well, to be honest with you, honestly, this is one of those movies that I felt like I remembered more than I actually did when I started watching it. But the animated series has always held a very, very special, dear place to my heart. I rewatch it routinely throughout the years, and I think for me, when it comes to like the inner voice of Batman, whether I'm reading a comic book, a novel, or some sort of thing, novels not very much, but it's always Kevin Conroy's Batman. So to me, that iteration of Batman is the definitive Batman for me. So, getting a chance to talk about what is essentially the biggest movie that came out or the biggest piece of media that came out for this era of Batman, I definitely wanted to jump on it.
Anton, this is arguably the most famous of the animated films that DC did, and that's really saying something considering in the past 30 plus years. I don't know the exact count. There's probably something like 20 to 30 animated Batman films by this point. That's not even including all the crossover stuff that Batman appeared in, like the Justice League stuff, some of the Superman movies. So there's I think it's over 50 by this point that he's appeared in.
I just want to put this out there. There are 2 Batman animated films that have been released in theaters. This one. And does anyone know the other one?
Killing Joke.
Lego Batman.
Does that count, though?
I guess technically. It's not part of the DC animated universe, though.
No, it's not. But yeah, too far and too between. But
this is, I think, still the most famous one.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fan favorite. You will often hear many Batman fans tell you that this is not only the greatest of all the animated films. I have heard fans claim this is the greatest Batman film ever, including the live action stuff. And I wanted to give the listeners some context. If any of them had forgotten this or not familiar with this, if either of you disagree with me, feel free to contradict me. The whole Batman thing, obviously that had been around a long time in the comic form. There was the TV series in the 60s. There was a movie in the 60s. Very different form of Batman. The Tim Burton movie comes out in 1989. It completely transforms not only the superhero genre, but kind of the movie industry as a whole. It really changed movies in a big way. It was enormously successful. It becomes a cultural phenomenon overnight.
Batmania?
Really, it really did.
Was what they called it.
Right. It was followed by a sequel 3 years later in 1992 with Batman Returns. 1992 is, I would make the case, the most important year for Batman still to this date. We had Batman Returns. We also had Batman the Animated Series, which debuted on Fox Kids. It's a watershed series for a lot of reasons that we're going to discuss later in this episode. This film, Mask of the Phantasm, it was made between seasons 1 and seasons 2 of the show. It comes out, as we said, Christmas 1993. But the reason why I wanted to mention the context of this film and why I think this was the absolute peak of Batman is he had a monopoly on the superhero genre. You had the animated X-Men series at the time that was on TV. But as far as like big screen goes, Batman had no competition in the 90s. Superman was dead by this point. Other studios would attempt their own superhero stuff, but like it was more niche. You got stuff like Darkman and The Shadow. I wouldn't call that competition for Batman in any way. So I think this really was the peak of Batman. And I'm even saying that incorporating all the Christopher Nolan stuff into this, because by the mid-2000s, there was simply far more competition. Spider-Man, the X-Men film franchise was popular. The MCU was about to kick off. But when this film came out in 1993, Batman owned not only the superhero genre culturally and commercially, he was kind of the face of pop culture. Your thoughts?
I mean, very well said, Pat. Batman being a cultural phenomenon in the 90s is not something to overlook. We know the current age of heroes that we've been able to witness with the golden age of Marvel. Heck, Doomsday's knocking on the door, still getting people excited, if not a little confused. But you go all the way to Batman for really kicking off what is success with superheroes and the influence of Batman on film storytelling, proper television animation storytelling, or just influence in pop culture in general. We'll touch more on the animated series, but man, Mask of the Phantasm, a big moment that was almost overlooked.
It was overlooked in a way. I mean, this made absolutely no money at the box office. It was a flop, which we'll talk about. I was into Batman. I was watching the animated series on TV at this point, as were all of my friends. And the fact that Batman got an animated movie, that was a very big deal. The concept of a feature-length animated superhero film was brand new. And that's kind of hard to believe now, 30 plus years later. Animated superhero movies are a dime a dozen, but this was unheard of in 1993. So I didn't see this in the theater. I would have been way too young. I saw this on VHS at a friend's house. It actually scared me when I first saw this movie. There's some pretty intense stuff in this film. Yeah, in a good way. And I mean, I don't know how many times I watched this over the years, but I almost missed this, Anton, when I was thinking about movies to cover for Why Wasn't It Better? But this is a great choice because completely ignored when it was released in theaters.
Can I say too, I feel like going back to the whole superhero era of that day, we had around that same time we had drafts for James Cameron's Spider-Man movie that was eventually scrapped, which looks really trippy if anybody's ever seen the script online. There were talks of X-Men getting developed. It was at this time that Marvel was essentially selling the rights to their characters to make movies. That Batman 1989 movie sparked this whole thing. So I think I've always been a little bit confused because obviously growing up, I was born in 92, so I didn't really I wasn't conscious enough to be aware of what's going on during that time. But to me, Mask of the Phantasm was a very iconic staple film growing up. However, I feel like during that time, it was the second year of the animated show dropping, so I gotta wonder what the marketing looked like during that time, right? Because up until recently, I feel like the West has been very much animation equals kids show, and there wasn't an adult audience to push, and so anybody who was a fan of Batman because of the 1989 movie were probably looking at this and they're like, oh, that's a Saturday morning cartoon kids thing. It's not something that I would be interested in. So I kind of wonder how much of that played into the overall box office failure of it. Whereas I think today, if you release something like this, I mean, look at that Ninja Turtles movie that dropped 2 years ago. I feel like it would have gotten that level of hype.
Yeah, I got two quick things to say. One, marketing was a big part of it. Two, Hollywood still messes it up. And listeners, if you want to see an example, go check out Transformers 1. That episode's great.
Really good movie, even if you don't like Transformers.
But the marketing, though.
The marketing. You're absolutely right, Ivan. We'll talk about that. Because, this falls into that weird halfway house where I would not call this a kid's movie, but it doesn't quite have the adult appeal at the same time. And that's not necessarily a negative. But yeah, they didn't market it. But that's kind of the animated series as a whole, right? Yeah, it was on Fox Kids, but what made it so special, and it got attention for this immediately, because this got Emmy, it won Emmys.
And Peabody's.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's easy to overlook that. It got the critical acclaim, and I think that's the main reason why it's endured so much over the years is you can show it to kids, it's appropriate for kids, but a lot of the content in it adults enjoy. My dad would watch the animated series with me. He didn't watch any other cartoon series with me, but he watched Batman.
And I guess before we go into the production history, in this day and age, we know that there are a lot of spoilers through the internet and just stuff getting leaked on Twitter, stuff getting leaked on wherever. Does anyone want to take a guess where the identity of the Phantasm was revealed back in 1993?
Mattel's toy line? Hasbro's toy line?
Yeah, it was the Kenner toy line.
Oh, it was Kenner. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty infamous, because it has, the Phantasm outfit on the right, Andrea Beaumont on the left.
I can't remember if I had the Phantasm toy. I had a bunch of Batman toys. Maybe.
Yeah, I had a lot of the original animated series toys, but I don't think I had the Phantasm series toys.
I think it's kind of rare now, right? Or have they reissued it maybe and
it's been reissued, and then you can still get an okay, not perfect condition for $25.
Okay. Not bad.
I remember there were these bootleg versions of them in the Mexican market. It was like 1998 that I got a Phantasm figure, and it was like super brolic. But the head sculpt is that of oh my god, if I remember correctly, it looked like Buzz from here. It looked like the Buzz character from
Buzz.
So someone over there didn't get the spoiler or didn't watch the movie. It was like, you know what? Let me just slap on this generic head sculpt on it.
You always were an asshole, Buzz.
You really suck.
You never learned how to make a martini, Buzz. Probably goes without saying, because I keep repeating this. This is the most famous Batman animated movie. By the way, you guys agree with that, right? Like, is there a more famous animated film still? It's just endured over the years. It's this. It became a cult classic immediately.
For Batman, I think that this is still like premiere, but because of this film, it's allowed for like even better, like not even better storytelling, but like other films have been able to push the boundaries for what is like animated films in the Batman universe, what a la Return of the Joker, which also fantastic.
Amazing. A movie we're going to cover eventually when we get
this
there.
And Under the Red Hood that I feel like out of all the movies, Under the Red Hood and this movie have been the two that are constantly getting mentioned anytime you talk to anyone.
I would throw the 2-part Dark Knight Returns in there that they did. I thought that was excellent. That was I think 2014, right around there.
They did a bunch of those, I think.
They did. I mean, but everything you're saying is right. This film and the animated series, which are so inherently tied together because this is basically an extended episode of the animated series, they opened up so many doors, production history for us.
Since the first season of the animated series has been so successful, Warner Brothers ordered a full-length feature film, originally planning to make it direct-to-video. Alan Burnett was hired to write the screenplay. His original idea for the film was to have Batman being captured by his enemies at Arkham Asylum and face a kangaroo court. This was rejected for the film, but later used for an episode of the series called Trial. This was also stolen by our good friend Larry David for the finale for Seinfeld. While the Joker does play a pivotal role in the film, it was Burnett's intention to tell a story far removed from the television series' regular rogues gallery. He also stated that he, quote, wanted to do a love story with Bruce because no one really done it on the TV show. I wanted a story that got into his head, end quote. Members of the creative team have claimed that they did not intend for the Joker to appear in the film. Paul Dini has contradicted this, stating that the Joker's role was always a part of the story from the beginning. The writers were initially hesitant about the Joker, as they did not want any connection to the 1989 Batman, but writer Michael Reeves said, quote, we then realized that we could make his appearance serve the story in a way that we never could in live action, end quote. The film's plot heavily resembles the 1987 storyline Batman Year 2, written by Mike W. Barr and illustrated by Alan Davis and Todd McFarlane. Citizen Kane served as an influence for the flashbacks, a story about loss and the passage of time. The animators went through 20 different versions of the Phantasm character before deciding on one they liked. The original idea was to make her resemble the ghosts of Christmas yet to come of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, something that even the Joker mentions in the finished version of the film. During production, Warner Brothers was impressed enough that the decision was made to release the film theatrically and increase the budget. Due to the decision, the animators went over the scenes in order to accommodate the widescreen theatrical aspect ratio. And co-director Eric Radomski explained, quote, it was basically an expanded episode. We boarded the script and did all of our designs and shipped it overseas. We were treating it with more quality, but we originally didn't intend for it for the big screen, end quote. Despite the decision to release this in theaters, Warner Brothers allegedly put little effort into the marketing campaign, and upon its Christmas Day release, the film completely bombed. The film eventually turned a profit on the home video market. And that is it for our production history. But we'll be back for more in the meat of this, or do we want to read the promo break?
I mean, I was going to try to include something about the 6 degrees of Warren Beatty's sex life. I couldn't really find one like worth doing for this movie. Okay. It's a stretch. So sorry, Anton. My theory is incorrect that every film can be connected by Warren Beatty's sexual conquests.
I feel like I can get there. I'm gonna
Do you have
some
something
research.
for us?
I'm gonna research, and then maybe we do an addendum to this.
Okay. Animated
But-
films, I think, are a little tougher, especially from this era.
We'll get there. It's probably more further removed, but we'll get there.
Really quick, before we get into the discussion, we want to thank everyone for listening. If you like the podcast and you haven't done so already, please follow, please subscribe. We encourage you to leave comments wherever you're listening or watching. You can follow us on all the major social media platforms. We're on Instagram, we're on X, and best of all, Letterboxd, where you can see our full list of films that we intend to cover there. If you really like what we're doing and you want to throw a few dollars our way, we do have a Patreon. You can support us directly there by getting access to episodes a full week early and ad-free, plus bonus content. Links to everything are in the description of this episode. Well, then let's talk Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Why wasn't it better? Number one, we were already getting into this, why this film flopped. I mean, they didn't market this at all. And releasing this on Christmas was just cruel.
Releasing in Christmas is either just a throwaway or it's Oscar bait. And I don't think I don't think that the studio was really trying to bait the Academy with this one.
They definitely weren't. This was a throwaway.
Well, Christmas releases are big now, right? Versus
they're
back
big
then.
now for some animated films, but a pseudo kid, pseudo adult
before audiences really
animated
knew how to
Batman
interpret
movie
these things.
on Christmas in the early 90s, no.
Yeah, I figured that because I think now anything releasing around there is like, come bring the whole family sort of thing.
Funny you ask, or you didn't ask, but funny you brought that up, Ivan. Here's what was in theaters around this time and into January of 94. Mrs. Doubtfire, Dominated, The Pelican Brief, Wayne's World 2, Sister Act 2, Beethoven 2nd, The Addams Family Values, Grumpy Old Men, Philadelphia, Schindler's List. So a combination of what you just said, family-friendly stuff, and then Oscar material. Here's how bad this film did. It did not even crack in the top 25. No chance.
Ooh.
It was dead on arrival when they released this.
That is 28 years later Bone Temple levels of bad.
Is that doing bad?
It's doing pretty bad, yeah.
Doing pretty bad.
Yeah. I like that first one though. It was really good. I haven't seen this one.
But I mean, it's such a shame because I think when you get so few opportunities already to have an animated film get a theatrical release, or at least one that is in retrospect such high quality, you give it no chance to succeed if you decide not to give it any marketing and then just release it at like a very inopportune time. Like it's just not fair. And then in retrospect, people look back at it and say, well, there's not a ton of animated films released in theaters. Like why bother if I'm a studio? They don't do great, but it's because of reasons like this.
Well, do we know at what point, like, did they finish it and then go, oh, you know what, this would make a good release? Because it said it was originally intended for direct-to-video, right? So I guess how far along were they when they decided it's going to be a theatrical movie? Because
Pretty
marketing,
far.
Okay, so then, because back then I would think, right, like if you're going to take an ad out somewhere, it's mostly print. Right, so circulation was probably sold at that point to whatever else was
far
running.
enough along that they had to change the aspect ratio, which is a major undertaking.
Yeah, so I watched the trailer for the film. Either you guys check it out.
Yeah,
it's pretty terrible, right?
They put nothing into it.
So it's the classic, like, they don't really do it anymore, but the narrator voice for film, and then
because this Christmas. Coming to a theater near you.
You love the Batman and Batman beating up bad guys. So come to theaters this December. I'm joking, but like it's not that far from
a film that's not for kids. Neither is it for adults.
Welcome back to Gotham City. Where is that? I don't know.
South Jersey.
And we're kidding Ivan, we're kidding listeners, but check out the trailer. It's actually not that far off. And I think like if that trailer is such an afterthought, why bother putting in the budget to put it in theaters? But
well, it reminds me of the Clone Wars too, right? Like it was an afterthought to make it a movie. Also, the movie debut.
That is a film that we have covered. So listeners, go check out that episode.
We sure have a lot of similarities with how this was treated.
Yeah,
we'll just release it in theaters. It's good enough. Yeah,
that's literally what he said in that behind the scenes video.
I do like to think that maybe there is like a studio executive that saw the close to finished version and said, this is really, really good, saw the quality of it and said, let's just release it as a film, because, hats off to it. Like, it is a really excellent film. Is it movie theater good? We'll talk a bit more.
We'll talk about that. But no, I take your point, Anton, where he probably had no expectations for it content-wise. And then when it hits on a lot of mature themes and stuff, they're like, wow, this is like a movie. We should do something with this. But regarding the marketing, you'll often hear they need to spend the equivalent of the budget to market it properly. It's like, okay, so $6 million, what's that going to get you in the early 90s? That's not a lot of money now. It was not a lot of money then.
Yeah. I mean, I guess good, because really you'd be limited, right? The immediate stuff would be more expensive. Like running a TV ad for it would be expensive. So you'd pivot to print, which at that point, again, they pivoted so far into it that I would doubt any sort of non-premium circulation for things would be available to them. So, I mean, comic books would probably be the only place that they could slap an ad of this on.
Right.
Just because they control that print space.
It's a shame that this bombed, but I mean, it got recognition almost immediately. I mean, it did get good reviews. Yeah. And like I said, like very quickly, when I saw this on VHS, everybody knew how good it was immediately.
Yeah, it's important to note, though, 1993, the formula for marketing animated films hadn't really evolved too much, and it was still just
dominated by Disney.
These are kids' movies. This is not weird. Like, how, like, there were a lot of unconventional films, or like there were definitely unconventional animated films released in 93 that I think forced studios to rethink that. They didn't try with Mask of the Phantasm, but they really took a risk with another 1993 stop motion film, kind of in the animated category. Ivan, I know Pat knows what I'm talking about. Ivan, any hints on the film?
Stop motion in 1983? No, I'm drawing a blank.
A little film called The Nightmare Before Christmas.
I was gonna say, in my mind, Coraline was popping. I was like, no, that's not. That's way too close.
But even that, Anton, Disney wouldn't release it under their banner. They put it under Touchstone.
Yeah, because they don't really know what to do with it. They were afraid of reception and how to properly market it. But we did get Batman Mask of the Phantasm in theaters, and just throwing this out there for any anime fans, super aside, we also got 2 Dragon Ball Z films in 1993.
Would they have just been indie releases here? Yeah.
I don't even know like who would release them.
No, they would have been, because we talked about this. Pokemon, the first movie in 99, was the first anime film in North America to get widespread release.
So it would have had to have been like maybe like 1 or 2
art
theaters. Yeah. But so we had the legendary Super Saiyan. So that was the 8th Dragon Ball film. And then BoJack was released also in 1993.
And there were probably Fandango events of that time.
Fandango events?
It would not have been widespread at all. Next reason.
That's crazy.
Again, we were kind of touching on this already with the mature themes, the story. Now, you will often hear this described as the best animated Batman movie and one of the best Batman movies of all time. My question for you both is, why? There have been dozens of Batman movies, animated Batman movies at this point. Why is this one so fondly remembered, other than the fact that it was just first?
Ivan, as our guest, what are your thoughts?
I think, Pat, you and I were texting each other back and forth a little bit before we started recording, but like, I honestly, I feel like this is one of those films that hits a couple different triggers for especially people of our age range. It's a very nostalgia driven, like look back for us. It's very much in tune with the animated series, which was already like a really good storytelling piece. To Pat's point earlier, like it's kind of multi-generational appealing. And it's one of those examples of a story that's actually able to hit on the right quadrants for adults and kids in as much of a way as possible. I feel like also the fact that this is an original story versus like adapting a lot of other things kind of makes it a little bit unique, right? Because when we're talking about stuff like Under the Red Hood or some of the more modern animated Batman films, a lot of those are like not direct adaptations, but they're very much adaptations of comic book iconic storylines. Whereas this one, similar in vein to the animated series, was introducing elements of stuff we hadn't seen before, or retelling some sort of aspect of it. Right? We've had Batman love stories in the comics, but none of them play out this way. This is very uniquely like a unique story, and that whole team working behind this, Paul Dini, and company, I think they were really trying to do something different with the character. So much so that I feel like this whole era of Batman gave us a lot of unique things. We got Harley Quinn out of this, and this is just another example of like a unique character, original tale. So I feel like in that it stands out for just those facts alone. But I do think nostalgia plays a huge bit to this for us, because if I'm being more analytical, to me, this seems like a supercharged couple episodes of the animated series, because it's hard for me to say like, oh, this did this one thing uniquely different than the animated show. But yeah, like I do feel like we have a lot of nostalgia writing for this.
Yeah, I mean, nostalgia is a big part. I think that's true. Everyone knows Batman's origin, or at least I would assume so at this point, because everyone's covered it. But being the first animated film, this film not only was able to tell it in such a unique way, like you said, Ivan, I think like you put it really well, that it was a unique story, but it did do it first. So it really set the tone for future Batman films. You know, I reference Return of the Joker. You don't get an emotionally charged Batman story like Return of the Joker. You don't get Under the Red Hood if you don't get more adult themes and just cinematic storytelling that you get with Mask of the Phantasm. And it never treated what is easily able to be treated as, you know, kids material, like the Batman story. Like they always gave it the right serious tone and never really strayed. And I think like that is why you look at the Mask of the Phantasm and say, this really sets the tone for animated Batman, or this sets the tone for Batman.
That's well said from both of you. I couldn't agree more about the content. This did a lot of things that you just wouldn't expect an animated film to do in '93. It did things. Seeing Bruce Wayne trying to be happy is still pretty unique. There's also a timing thing with this film. Number one, I mean, it's a shame that it bombed. It did have the cachet of being the only animated film released during when the animated series was actually on. So it feels like part of the animated series. I think, Ivan, you mentioned that, the nostalgia piece. There's also another thing. The onslaught of the DC animated universe really did not hit full throttle until the 2000s. This stood by itself for a while, because the second animated film that DC tried, which was Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, that didn't come till 5 years later. So this kind of just stood by itself for a while. For a good 5 years, this was the only animated film in existence in, you know, the Batman universe. And then I think you had Return of the Joker in 2000, you had Batman and Catwoman in 2003. So a good 10 years went by, and this was still really only one of a handful of them. And it was the best one. And then when the Batman live action franchise prematurely died after Batman and Robin in 97, I think this gained a lot of momentum too, just because of it really started to pick up steam with how fondly people remembered it.
Yeah. It's amazing to see just like that decade and what was released in that decade post the Batman the Animated Series. I made the joke about Batman Beyond, but like I really feel like that was such a groundbreaking series that was able to really tell those stories because of the influence of Batman the Animated Series.
And that came out, what, in 2000? 99?
Yeah, 99.
Okay.
So
it's a while later, though.
Yeah, a while later.
Even we'll talk about it a little later. The animated series ended prematurely. It got canceled not because it wasn't doing well in 1994, but because of studio politics.
Yeah, it was a very healthy season 1, though. I think it was a different time for TV.
60 episodes.
Yeah, see, that's not really what they do anymore, but
no.
Very healthy season 1. Season 2, 20 episodes. I think that's more generally what we expect, or at least we used to.
No, I was gonna say, you brought this up before, Pep, but like the existence of the Fox Kids universe, or like block of animated shows, and then the Kids WB block. Once they got everything up on Kids WB for Batman, I feel like things kind of kicked off a little bit more. To your point, on the late '90s, early 2000s. My point of recognition is that point when Kids WB and Fox were like two competing things. It's a detail that I didn't really like pay too much attention to. The fact that like at one point you had Marvel and DC stuff in the same animation block with Fox. To me, that whole like studio politics kind of played out the way that the Netflix Daredevil stuff got recently, which is essentially like, hey, why do we keep paying or footing the bill for something that we're not able to control or benefit from? It's funny to see when animated shows are on their peak and they get, or any type of show gets axed just because of stuff like that, where you're hitting some peak content and it's unceremoniously put to bed.
I have something that I want to show you guys that is like it's probably a huge like throwback for Fox Kids fans of the 90s. So let me grab it.
I hope it's the VHS tapes of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
This was a lot. This was released in '98. Direct mail.
Wow.
Direct mail magazines featuring. Now this was, and it's always localized, which of course featured whatever the top shows of the time were. At this time, of course, they were really pushing for Spider-Man and Power Rangers. But this is also an issue. This issue was later on in the series one they run. They did have earlier Batman-oriented direct mail Fox Kids magazines. So if you're wondering where some of the marketing went, directly to the kids in the mailboxes.
So not the case anymore. Well, not that way, at least.
For some of our younger listeners, this was how we got our news.
Back in our days, they sold us toys every 6 minutes on commercial airtime.
Yeah, it's how you get the Tiger poster with your Zuba.
Both of you are so right about the content in this film, though. I mean, I was really impressed rewatching this just the other night. There's stuff in here, and again, this goes. We keep mentioning the animated series, and we're going to continue to do so because this goes hand in hand with it. There's all these moments in this film that never had any impact on me as a kid that watching it now are much deeper. The thing that stood out for me the most is when Bruce is standing in front of his parents' grave and he's crying and he said, "I'm sorry, I just didn't expect to be happy."
It's such a good scene. My goodness.
And I don't, it's just animation. You didn't see a lot of stuff like that back then. Much more common now.
It's not I think fans of the animated series know that you see a different side to Bruce, or you see a different side to Batman, especially on the episodes where he really does give a helping hand to his rogues gallery. But this was also a very different Bruce that we get a window to. This is a young Bruce Wayne. This is a Bruce Wayne that's at a crossroads. Become the Bat, or become the Bat or become the billionaire.
I wouldn't call this film an origin story for Batman, but we get a nice, lengthy flashback that shows us a bit of his origins, which I think is really well done. They spend an appropriate amount of time on it. Andrea Beaumont, she represents more than just a love interest, right? She's the road
the
Beaumonts. She's the road not taken. She's the road not taken for Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially. He obviously ends up still becoming Batman, but it's just really interesting to see this in this format.
It's interesting in that the series has always been, or the animated series, especially season 1, is so deeply rooted in noir, and that continues into this film, and it's Batman solving a mystery. I think that one might argue like a story like that just seems so like, that's so plain for like a Batman story, but I think it's a very poetic story, and I think it's also very well done in terms of being able to show us like the grounded elements of Batman does fight gangsters, and at the same time you have another element which we'll talk about later of who Batman attracts in terms of villains.
You ever find the that moniker he goes with, the world's greatest detective? And I feel like in a lot of places, like if you see Batman in Justice League or Batman in anything where it's Batman and somebody, it's people throw that line out like that, but you never see him doing detective work unless you go back to these animated series, and you see it happening here, Anton, to your point in here. And you see a lot of very big human elements, and like, not to get sidetracked on the series itself, because we're talking about the movie here, but I think the team involved in this and in the show fundamentally understand Batman to his core, the way that I think other projects kind of didn't really give us that. I think of like the Heart of Ice episode with Mr. Freeze from the animated series. I think of Baby Doll. Baby Doll was a big one too. Like that.
Ooh, that was a crazy episode.
And it gave us moments like that, like the one we see here in the movie with Bruce talking to his parents at their grave. They're so like as a kid, you're like, okay, well, you don't really pay too much attention to it, but looking back on it with the eyes of an adult, and it takes on a different, like, heavier meaning for it on the rewatch. And I've noticed that on a lot of these episodes for this series. And it all started here. So this being one of the first or earlier projects of the show, it's very timeless.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's been a Batman project that has kind of hit it out of the ballpark this way since then. That has been this well established and this, that ran on for that many years. I feel like we're yet to see that.
The detective stuff, 100%, Ivan. You the best versions of Batman are, I think, where you see this, which the show did so well. You got a number of episodes like that, where you actually got to see him doing really the best. His intellect is what makes him so powerful, right? It's not his muscles or his martial arts skills. Now, the love story in this, I actually wish we sell more of it. I was really curious to know why Andrea, other than the fact that she also visits her mother's, the grave of one of her parents. It's like, what makes her so special? Because Bruce Wayne, we see in this film, he's involved with a lot of women, which I appreciated, because I want my Bruce Wayne to have fun. But what about Andrea makes her so special? And that's where I think this film could have shown us a bit more.
Yeah, other than the relating to him on that level of, I guess, like, emotional trauma from loss. I didn't really I feel like we didn't delve deep enough with it.
I really like where what you're saying, Pat, around what does Andrea represent for Bruce. And I think too often we just dive first into this is what the Batman does, but this Andrea storyline isn't also like a love interest storyline. It's also an opportunity for Bruce to reflect and think, what if I hadn't gone down this path? What if I'd been able to choose love? What if I chose not to be the Batman? And in Andrea's case, which we realize as we watch the movie, is she actually went down that path a lot more than Bruce could have expected. Of, my parents were also murdered, or my family was destroyed because of because of mobsters, because of the evil of this world. I will also take that on this path, except I'm going to do it solely for vengeance. And I think that, as a coin flip, is really interesting for Bruce to have to confront.
And then conversely, when she comes back into his life, would he have been willing to give up the cape and cowl then?
I don't think so.
Because he was going to get back together with her, right? Until she disappeared again. Now, this is before he learns that she is the Phantasm, which, by the way, him thinking that it was her father is hilarious. It's like, you think it's the 70-year-old guy?
He was like, it has to be Mr. Beaumont.
It's like, does it? Also,
Yeah.
I have some questions about how does the Phantasm work as a character, because there are numerous scenes where she appears to have supernatural powers.
Yeah. I wish they would have seen something of that.
Yeah, they don't elaborate on that.
No.
It's one of those, like, do we know the physics of, or like how all of the gadgets that Batman uses works? Not really. So I think like there's probably some suspension of disbelief that we can have with the Phantasm's powers or what have you.
This is something I don't think this would work nearly as well with live action. You can get away with this stuff with animation. This would be tough to do in a live action. Like when the Phantasm's like gliding around and the smoke stuff, it would be kind of cheesy.
Yeah, we got kind of a close interpretation, or we got basically the live action version of like how you can interpret it with Scarecrow in Batman Begins. But
even that was grounded.
Yeah, it was ground, and like I'd argue like still not my favorite of how Scarecrow's powers work. But to your point, the way that it's presented on the show is a bit more fantastical.
Yeah.
Works perfectly for animation.
So we get this original villain in the Phantasm, which again, to your point, Ivan, this was giving us stuff we hadn't really seen before, even if you're a comic purist. You're like, well, this is different. And then we bring back a very familiar one in the Joker. And then that's the next reason I want to talk about why this wasn't better. The Joker did not need to be in this movie. This is one of my primary issues with the film.
Kindly disagree.
The final act just turns into Batman versus the Joker. This is something that I could have seen on one of any of the 25 episodes of the TV series that the Joker appears in. I think it takes away from the Phantasm as a character. And like I said, the Joker has been heavily featured throughout the animated series and a number of the other films. The Phantasm, obviously an original special character, but you think the Joker's fine in this movie? Tell us why.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I absolutely think that the Joker being in this film is a happy accident. It's clear that the writers did not want to have the Joker in this. Studio interference says, well, we got to throw a character in that we can have a proper toy for, that people love the Joker. Jack Nicholson's great. But I really do think in terms of the storyline and how it's presented, having the Joker in the film fits very poetically. You have Batman, who's chosen his life of, fighting crime, being the Batman. But the film presents the story in that we already discussed, like Andrea Beaumont presents the other road that Bruce could have taken. They go through the World's Fair and they see the world of tomorrow, the home of tomorrow. Like, in terms of the writing, it just seems, again, very well done that you come back to that, but now that world is decayed. They've taken a different road to get to that world of tomorrow. And in that world of tomorrow, what do you get? You get the repercussions of those actions. You have Andrea, who's chosen more vengeance, is become the Phantasm, and the reckoning that comes with it, whether it's the death of, those that she knows wronged her, but she's also forgone love. And Batman, who's also denied himself a true relationship with a woman that he used to love, and instead is in an unending war with his rogues gallery, and especially his main villain, the Joker. And you present that in the film, and like you can look at the animated series and say, yeah, like look at all these episodes where the Joker is fighting Batman. It's a dime a dozen. But without the context of the full film, it just seems a bit more hollow. The Joker, of course, is more involved in the storyline, but I really just wanted to point that out, of Joker really being an important part of, again, the story and what it says about Batman and the Phantasm.
I could see that. I do got to agree with Pat, though, because I feel like, to me, and this is like, I feel like my opinion, having watched it in the years ago, was very much like I was on board for the Joker. So I can see the studio's perception of like why they want the Joker in there, because I'm like, oh, cool, Joker. You got somebody that Batman can, 1v1 at the end there. But from like a narrative standpoint, and like putting on my film goggles here, Joker doesn't serve anything unique to the plot that I can't think of, like putting any other character in his shoes and they can fulfill it just as well as the Joker can. I just feel like now, going back and looking at it, I would have loved to have seen that ending be all about him trying to stop her from killing the last of the mob bosses. And that would have been like the central conflict that ends the story. And it would still check off all the boxes of what we ultimately got. But again, that being said, from like, as a marketing guy, I'm like, yeah, you probably do need the Joker to sell the ticket here. And I guess that's the distinction, right, between like whether you want to release this in theaters or if it was going to be a direct to video thing. I don't know. I just I have a hard time, because to me, I was telling Pat before we started recording, but I watched this thing three times, and the last one I watched last night with my sister just to further prep. And we were both like, did the Joker really need to be in there? It just kind of seems like he's everywhere now in Batman's origin. And now he also is like a henchman for this other mob boss guy. So to me, it kind of oversaturates Joker a little bit. But again, that's just my That's my view. I just feel like they kind of overuse him a little bit too much, which I understand from a marketing perspective, but from a film narrative, I feel like they could have gone a different route with it. He just doesn't serve a unique role that I'm like no other character but the Joker could have served all that he did in this film.
Yeah.
it
Rebuttal.
Well, one quick thing I want to add. It's the same problem I have in the Tim Burton film where the Joker is the primary villain of the film, but they also have him be the man responsible for killing Bruce Wayne's parents. It's like it's an over-reliance on the character. They're trying to wedge him into this plot far more than they need to. He's Batman's greatest enemy. He also happens to be the guy who's behind everything with Andrea Beaumont's past. It's not so much an issue with this film I have, Anton. It's an over-reliance on the Joker in general. There are any number of other villains you could have put in here in the Rogues Gallery. It could have just been a simple mob boss. But for me, it diluted the specialness of the Phantasm storyline in this movie.
I would argue that, checkboxes aside, when we go back into the context of 1993, we still don't have a ton of media that still pushes the same Joker narrative. Sure, we had Batman 89 and the animated series, but in terms of the Joker being pushed as like the main villain in future media, probably really is influenced, of course, from the studio saying, hey, like the Joker works really well as a villain, we got to put him in the films. But you really do get that, like, again, setting the tone in 1993. I'd argue, again, I love the performance of Mark Hamill.
Oh, yeah. He's great. He's fantastic.
Joker.
Brilliant.
And I think, like, I don't want to downplay how fantastic he is and how his character interacts with the mobsters in the film, his dialogue with Batman. And, again, the usage of the Joker here feels a bit more, like, high quality than few more like I'd argue like lower quality usages of the Joker in other Batman films. I know it's at this point it feels overplayed, but I mean, in context of 1993, this is probably one of the best uses of Joker. If we're going with the same, if you're following in my same track of the importance of having the Joker in the film to show basically this is Batman's love of his life. It's fighting crime.
That makes sense. And in that case, I just thought of another reason why I wish this movie were longer. I wish they had gone, if they're going to feature the Joker here, which they do, I wish they had actually gone deeper into it. We don't get to see how the Joker flips it on the mob. There's a gap in the film story between he's just basically like their driver, their hitman, right? He's like an enforcer basically. But how does he get to the point where he flips it on the mob and has them afraid of him? It's sort of a Joker origin story, but I think it's left incomplete. I wish we had gotten more of it, actually. Kind of like the relationship with Andrea. I wish I had seen a little bit more of it. I wish there was like one more scene in flashback where we saw the Joker sort of take control and become the clown prince of crime that he ends up as.
But I totally see where you're coming from, because otherwise it's a bit jarring to just know, oh, the Joker was planting bombs in people's apartments.
Right.
It's like, that doesn't seem like his MO. It should have been a whoopee cushion that exploded.
Yeah, he is brilliantly voiced though by Hamill. It's the best. He's the iconic Joker for me. I mean, for many other Batman fans as well. And I think to your point, Anton, too, he wasn't in 1993. Hamill established this legend over years of voicing the Joker. But, this was also an era when celebrities voicing characters in animated films wasn't a major selling point like it is now. And, that might have been another reason why this film didn't do well at the box office. And this is not a fault of this film, but I think it might explain partially why it didn't do well. There's no draw here in the voice cast.
Yeah, they didn't have like Brad Pitt playing one of the gangsters.
Right. That wouldn't have made the film better or worse necessarily, but it would be a very different scenario now. They try to get much more famous individuals to do the voices these days.
Yeah. Chris Pratt would be all over this.
They had Abe Vigoda.
Bars, not Stacy Keach.
Can I just say, though, one thing before we leave the point of the Joker? The laughing gas and the way that he offs his victims with those permanent smiles and all that is almost
so
like
scary.
There was an
Creepy.
episode of Kevin Smith's podcast a while ago where he talked to Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, and they talked about how Warner Brothers was like, we can't show anything super gruesome, and so they came up with alternatives. And the laughing gas was one for the Joker, and I was like, it's almost so much worse.
It is creepy.
When you get, because already his character is like, you feel like he's on the verge of keeling over because Abe Vigoda's character is just coughing a bunch.
Yeah.
And then when the big reveal and like his face is like tied in that grim smile, it's just, it really throws you for a loop. Again, points to this film doing what no other animated films were doing at the time.
Next reason is kind of just a blanket reason we can talk about everything else. I mean, this really is like the definitive interpretation of the character for generations of people. I would say for millennials and I think Gen X, when I think of Batman, the animated series depiction of Batman is what I think of. It's not the live action stuff for me. As iconic as the Burton movie is, as iconic as The Dark Knight was in 2008, when I think of Batman, these are the kinds of stories that I picture in my mind.
And Batman's voice has to be Kevin Conroy.
100% yes.
And that's carried over. That voice is carried over a lot too. Like I remember a couple years ago, I was doing this like after school teaching thing for intro to film for middle schoolers. It was like a spring thing, and like a bunch of them were talking about the Arkham games that came out. I think around like 2015 or so, and that was like they took a lot of elements of the era of Batman that we're talking about now into there, including Mark Hamill's Joker, Kevin Conroy as Batman, and it's just so like that voice is so ingrained in everybody, both of them, both the Joker and Batman, that I feel like it was great to see that still being talked about outside of our generation. And it's, I don't know, like, you know, not to get sidetracked, but like I'm having a hard time envisioning the future of animation without those two iconic voices on there. Which now, unfortunately, we're without our Kevin Conroy, and I think Mark Hamill said he's retired from the voice if Kevin Conroy is not doing it anymore. So, obviously, because he's passed. But those are big shoes to fill for the future.
They are, and I think. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that someone's going to do better than Kevin Conroy, but I do want to shout out Bruce Greenwood. He's done a really good job voicing Bruce Wayne / Batman in, I think it's like coming up on like 10 films at this point. Anton, I might be over exaggerating, but he's done a great job with Batman.
Yeah, he's done a great job, and like it feels impossible to fill those shoes, like Ivan said. But, you know, shouts out to the folks that continue to keep it going. I think, you know, even just on top of Batman, this whole era of the DCAU that Bruce Timm and, you know, Paul Dini really started set the tone for like superhero storytelling. I mean, you have Superman the Animated Series, Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond. I feel like everything, even moving into the Justice League, such amazing storytelling and doing way better than I'd argue all the way to now, with maybe the most recent Superman film like coming close. The DCAU has dominated in terms of storytelling for DC superheroes.
You and I have talked about this on numerous episodes before, Anton. The animated DC stuff that they've done in the past 15, 20 years is outstanding. It's far better than any other live action stuff.
Oh yeah, it's hands down. Like, we've already talked about how influential this Batman is to Batman, and you could look at Christopher Nolan's Batman and know that it was influenced by this Batman.
This is where I'm going to get a little negative. I try to judge all films equally. How does this film separate itself from being just an extended episode of the animated series?
In execution, very little, other than trying to fix the aspect ratio, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, they did use the opening of the film when you see Gotham and it's like computer-generated Gotham.
It's cool. The opening credits were a step up for sure.
That was like, hey, like we need to do something for the film that looks pretty. And like that, maybe the action set piece at the end with the World's Fair. Otherwise, they didn't really expand it, at least to my knowledge.
So in the past like week, I've watched like 24 episodes of the animated series just to like kind of prep for this. This is going to sound mean, but this just does not seem like a theatrical film to me. There's very little about the quality of animation here that I think elevates this as a theatrical film, which sounds harsh, I know, but I judge films as a finished product, not what they might have been. They may have intended this to be direct-to-video, but it was not a direct-to-video film. It looks too much like an episode of the TV series. Very much reminds me of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. You can see the animation ceiling watching this film. I would say other than the opening credits, they're using a lot of the same shortcuts that you see on TV, a lot of recycled character movements. The foregrounds are static. There's a lot of soft focus. There's some blurriness. I think this film is quite dated looking. And I do think quite highly of this film. But for me, there's not a whole lot different from this and just of an extended episode of the animated series. And I expect more from a theatrical film.
I echo a lot of that, Pat. I do get the elements of Clone Wars here. That being said, to me, at least, right, like, I don't necessarily view it as a negative. Just because, for one, like, this was a studio decision. It was something that the creatives had no control over. And we've seen this happen multiple times across different projects. We were just talking Star Wars before we jumped on. And that's about to happen with The Mandalorian, which I'm pretty sure is going to feel similar to this, like a slightly upgraded premium episode of a series that's been going on. But I think this is one of those situations where, like, this is the best case scenario. You're kind of we're delivering on a high quality thing of something you already enjoy. To your point, though, I totally understand. Like, I think from if I'm gonna go to the movies, I expect to see something that I'm not necessarily gonna see in my small screen back home. And so something's got to give. There's got to be some sort of like quality upscale, which we don't necessarily get here. But I think to me, what drives fully this film is the narrative, the story, everything on it works. And just, it's unfortunate that it seems a little bit more low budget because clearly it wasn't built for it. But this is one of those situations where I feel like it deserves a lot more. It deserved a lot more love than it got for that release time that it had. Obviously, I think over time it's gotten all the accolades and praises that it's needed to. But I think this is the best case scenario for whenever a studio does this type of stuff, where they're like, we want to take this that you normally see here and just toss it over to the big screen. If Clone Wars was this level of good, I think it would have gotten a much better reaction than what it ended up getting. For what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, that's really well said, Ivan. I just want to add, there are a lot of animated films that have released with larger budgets that are not this good. I just want to point out like a couple modern examples where, like, the Simpsons movie and the Bob's Burgers animated movie. One would say like, oh, like that's not competition for Batman. But those had significantly higher budgets. Again, huge fan IPs, and sure, the animation looks better than it does on TV, but even then, the writing is not that much better than, it does not excite me as much as like this film does. And I think a bit of that is the animated series also is a TV series that was punching above its weight. It was an animated series that really excelled beyond what animated series were at the time. And with that, you kind of get this realization, if you package it really neatly into a 70-minute film, you do get like a pretty solid film. Now, sure, like the animation isn't up to the standard of what you could expect if you were to put a bigger budget for a theatrical film. But I kind of take Ivan's look and perspective on this almost like a moment in time where you're able to really capture the aesthetic for what was the animated series, which was a bit more lean, but with really tight storytelling. While it may be dated, especially compared to what animation is now, I think there's a charm to that. And I think that, again, it really speaks to the quality of what the animated series was and the quality that the execs saw to really say, hey, let's make this a theatrical movie.
That's where it really is a product of its time, right? This is, Ivan, I like what you said. It's like the best case scenario for 1993. Probably pretty obvious. I think this was the best movie for its time. I think this is a better film than the live action stuff that they were doing at the time. And we would see the DC animated universe evolve over time, particularly with the content, right? One of the things, it's probably a little unfair on my part, and it's part of the storytelling thing. When you're doing a theatrical film like this, you expect, frankly, a little bit more blood, a little bit more violence, maybe a little bit more sexual themes like they would do later in the Batman films, right? You know, I'm going to use something like Under the Red Hood or like Batman Hush. Now, I think the difference is with the later stuff with the DC animated universe, a lot of those films are clearly made for adults. You can show them to kids, I'm sure, but Under the Red Hood, I would not call that a kids movie. I think that's made for just a more mature audience, whereas this, they were definitely keeping the animated series primary audience in mind. I don't think that means it's a weaker story, but if you're slicing like razor thin margins between, you know, like my original question, what separates this from the animated series? For me, not much. The opening credits. I do want to really shout out the score composed by Shirley Walker. It is outstanding. Anton's on mute.
I was going to say the Latin chanting on the Batman theme.
It reminded me of The Hunt for Red October in a great
It's
way.
It's really
very
good.
effective. She's an underrated composer. I think long dead. I think she died a while ago. But she would come back for Batman Beyond. She is a major contributor to the Batman animated universe.
Yeah, definitely want to also share utmost respect for her as a composer.
Yes. The film's animation, everything I have to say about the quality that has nothing to do with the design of this. You know, I absolutely love how this film looks in terms of just the Art Deco out of time style that it's echoing. It's doing something unique, but it's also connecting it to the original Tim Burton film, which I really enjoy. You know, the same Batmobile and whatnot. It's this is my favorite visual representation of Batman for sure.
It's very timeless. Also, I love the little, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but in that little Futures exhibit, the model for the Batmobile is there.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I had never caught that until my third viewing, and I was like, "Oh wow, wait!"
The
Further
Stark
adds to the whole
Expo?
future
Wait,
thing.
no, not that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very Stark Expo.
Do you guys have any? I was curious. Do you guys have any favorite moments from the film?
The stuff I was kind of referencing earlier, where he's at his parents' grave, and it's just a side of Bruce Wayne you don't get to see often. And his interactions with Alfred, I think, are great when he decides to be Batman. And, you know, the film could have played it one way where Alfred's like really happy for him, and Alfred's kind of horrified in a way, just like knowing like, wow, I've got to commit to this.
Yeah, one of my favorites is how you get introduced to Bruce, and he's like, how do I make the villains fear me? And then juxtapose that with the actual scene of when he finally puts on the cowl, and Alfred just visibly, like you said, horrified of what he's become. And I thought that was a fantastic scene to show the fear that Batman can strike in you.
I like all the councilman scenes. He was such a sleazy character from
such
the
a
start.
sleaze.
Is that Hart Bachner doing the voice?
Yeah, such a sleaze.
He's did you recognize his name?
Art Bachner. No,
he is Ellis from Die Hard. Hans Bobby.
Oh, you're right.
That's him. Definitely a sleaze.
Or Abe Vigoda.
Tessio.
Yeah, exactly.
From The Godfather. Oh, it's good stuff. Yeah, the voice acting in here is great. I mean, we've talked about Conroy and Mark Hamill. Dana Delaney as Andrea does a great job. And again, this was really just before the era of big names lending their voices. I mean, Mark Hamill, he was famous for being Luke Skywalker. He's probably more famous for voicing the Joker at this point, I would think, right? Is that possible?
Yeah, it's
maybe.
I think it's neck and neck.
It has to be neck and neck. But like, look, as a comic book fan and the legacy that's Joker, I do have to give it to Mark Hamill with the Joker Association.
Done a lot of other voice work too. Just want to point that out. Yeah. He hasn't only voiced the Joker.
Yeah, he's also voiced. He's been in a ton of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
you know, he disappears into his voice roles though. If you were to tell me, even Joker, right? Like if I took away that knowledge out of my head and you're like, who do you think voices? I wouldn't be able to tell you to tell you who it would be.
But this is that era when voice actors would disappear into their voices.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like nowadays you're hiring Chris Pratt to just voice Chris Pratt, like
Super Mario.
Seth Rogen voicing Donkey Kong, and he like told the filmmakers like, fine, I'll do it, but I don't want to do an accent. I just want to use my voice.
So frustrating.
A little bit, yeah.
It's so lazy. It's so lazy though, because like I feel like, you know, we touched on this a little bit, but animation over in in the East is a lot more sophisticated, or at least taken seriously than it is here in the States. And I feel like if we did here, we would just be looking for the best voice actor available versus like, oh, what's the name star that's gonna drive money, because it's all about money here, obviously. And I totally get it, but at the same time, I just wish the Western audience was a little bit more sophisticated, I guess, in their palette of choice for the stuff that they go after. Because there's so many good voice actors that I feel like add so much grandiose or levity or all that into these performances, and it's just a shame that they don't get the spotlight that I think they deserve.
Yeah, for Mark Hamill, I just want to throw this out there. I would have imagined being in a film like, you know, the Star Wars trilogy, he wouldn't necessarily have to, like, he'd be able to just take like high profile roles in theatrical film.
Nope.
But Mark Hamill still pursued TV, film, and voice acting across both. And he was not above taking small roles on now more obscure 90s and 2000s films. He was on 4 episodes of Pepper Ann. Anyone remember Pepper Ann?
No.
No.
He was on he was on a episode playing a homeless man, not even named, on Hey Arnold. He was on 1 episode of Pinky and the Brain. But now
I would argue though that I feel like he was kind of pigeonholed as a result of being in Star Wars, because I think there's few talent that gets away from it. Like Harrison Ford's like not one of those, but
Can I be less diplomatic?
yeah.
He's too ugly. I don't mean that to be like, I don't want to sound mean, but like he's just not good looking enough for leading man material, which is probably part of the reason why he very intelligently pivoted into the career that he had.
But he was such a heartthrob in Corvette Summer. What do you mean? But I think you're right, Pat. Though that, and I think his height, because Hollywood is a very, if nothing else, it's very much like, these are the standards. Here's what we're looking for constantly in the leading man, and if you don't fit that, then it's a harder thing to grasp onto. Unless you're Harrison.
Oh, right. He was Fire Lord Ozai.
That's the big one.
He was.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
It's huge.
Now imagine the controversy of Mark Hamill as live action Fire Lord Ozai.
It wouldn't have worked.
Would not have worked.
He's not an intimidating man. Well, we've gone through the notes. Do we want to give our ratings?
Let's do
Is
it.
it time?
Yeah. Ivan, as our guest, would you like to give your rating?
I want to hear Anton's rating first, because I feel like Pat and I's rating is going to be very similar.
Sure. I mean, look, I have I have all the time in the world for this film. I think that this film is able to sum up exactly why I love comic books and the storytelling that can come from it, as well as just how it's been adapted so perfectly, not only to the animated series, but also being able to pivot quickly and turn it into a film. Like, again, it's just not an easy feat. There's not a ton of films that can say that they can take this same structure and are able to create something so successfully that really does set the tone for what is animated Batman, let alone animated superhero films. You know, we mentioned a few of the really, really great animated films that have released since Mask of the Phantasm. And, you know, I just really, again, I got to give those shout outs. You know, go check out Under the Red Hood, Batman the Dark Knight Returns, Return of the Joker. I really also love the Crisis on Infinite Earths specials that DC did. But you don't get any of those films. You don't get a more just refined storytelling and proper depiction of Batman or superheroes unless you have a Mask of the Phantasm, which, again, also respect. You don't get it without Batman the Animated Series. So I think that at its core, this is a film that, while it may not have the look of what you would expect for a bigger budget theatrical film, it has all the qualities of, I think, just a fantastic film in general. And it's because of that, whether it's the voice acting, the tight writing, the great characters, pacing, the timeless animation, This is top tier for me. This is undoubtedly an A, and I would recommend it so hard every single time.
Yeah, I feel I echo a lot of that. I feel like this is one of the most iconic animated films of the early 90s. I do, again, like I feel like I view this in under two different lenses. The lens of which I viewed it through originally, and the one now, and it still has its standouts. I feel like for the time, especially, it gave us a very unique story, something we weren't really getting anywhere else. And it was riding high during a time when I feel like the Batman franchise in general was just riding on the winds of the 1989 film. And right before things started kind of souring with the whole transition from Tim Burton to to the other two movies, but I feel like this was definitely the golden age, and it provided us with something still unique and still warmly remembered today. To me, though, this is a solid B plus. Only because I feel like, just having seen it again recently, it's a great heavy version, or like thick version of a animated series episode, which I really find enjoyable. It's just it wasn't quite as high as I kind of remember it to be. And something we didn't touch on, but I just wanted to get it out. I could have sworn there's alternate takes of scenes that I remember seeing before till now, and I did a little research on it, and apparently there are some differences, like post Andrea and Bruce spending the night together, she's wearing his clothes in one cut of the movie versus the cut in the movie that's on HBO Max, and like minor things, and it was just tripping me up. I kind of mentioned this to Pat before, but I was having some moments where I'm like, wait, I feel like I remember this scene differently, and I don't know if you guys experienced the same thing, but maybe it's just the fact that I hadn't seen it in a while. But yeah, evidently there's minor differences.
I wonder if maybe there's some of that in the 4K release of the film. I don't have a copy of it, but I gotta check that out. That sounds it sounds interesting to see some additional content.
It's a good thing to bring up because at this point, I don't trust HBO Max. They have the entire animated series. Apparently, the episodes are numbered out of order, and the names of the episodes aren't in the correct order. They also have the new Batman Adventures lumped together with the animated series. And according to Wikipedia, the new Batman Adventures is considered the third season of the animated series. I just thought, since they're animated differently and they were, they aired on TV years apart, they were two different series, but apparently not. What do I know? This is an endorsement for physical media because you're always going to get the truest version of whatever you have there. As far as my rating for this film goes, for something that is often touted as the best Batman movie, I think this is overrated. It is not my personal favorite of the animated films. I think it was the best Batman movie for its time, but I think it's quite dated and it is a product of its time, and that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate how much that this film means to Batman as a character and Batman the series overall. I think with some exceptions, notably my co-host and some others, I think a lot of people who claim that this is the best, they haven't seen a lot of the newer animated films. I hear a lot of people just default to this the same way that they default to Mark Hamill as the Joker. Oh, Mask of the Phantasm is the best Batman movie. Mark Hamill's the best Batman villain. And if you believe that, that's fine. That's your opinion. But I think there's a lot of nostalgia goggles for this. I'm not disputing Mark Hamill's an amazing Joker, but there are so many other great voice performers in the animated series too, who just turned in excellent performances. Like, you get random stuff, Anton, like Roddy McDowall as the Mad Hatter gives a fantastic voice performance. Just one example of many, right? A lot of the other villains, similar things, right, too. I think the Joker overshadows a lot. I think he's overused. He shouldn't have been in this film. It's a better film if he's not in it. This does do a really nice job of fitting into the animated series. Now, if you want to compare this to something negatively, like Pokemon, the first movie, Anton, that we reviewed and how we talked about, this does a horrible job of fitting into the anime that was on TV at the time. It contradicts what's in the anime. The story doesn't work in the anime. This film, Mask of the Phantasm, fits very, very nicely into the animated series that was on TV at the time. And I think that's a plus. Now, but at the same time, it can't escape its TV production quality. And I think that dings it a bit as a theatrical film, because that's what this is. This is a film that they released in the theater, and it looks like I'm watching a TV movie. Now, that being said, I do rate this highly. It is an interesting, well-told story with very tragic, well-developed characters who are voiced outstandingly by their actors. It is one of the strongest Batman stories. There's a lot of nostalgia at work here. I would imagine if I were a kid and I saw this now, I don't think I'd be as impressed as some of us millennials are. But that kind of just goes with the generational thing, right? I can safely say that I would much rather watch this above a lot of the live action stuff. So maybe I've sounded harsh on this film, but I'm going to rate this a B. I think it's very good. I don't quite have it as this like perfect masterpiece that a lot of other Batmans do.
And here we are.
That is it for Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Ivan, this was a lot of fun. We knew it would be fun. It was fun. It delivered.
It was great. Thanks for having me on, guys. Again, I'm always down for any Batman stuff. And if I may throw in a request in there, if y'all talk about Star Wars at any point, I'm happy to jump on.
It's on the plans.
Listen, I could be on an airplane and I'll still jump on in high quality. I'll figure it out.
We've got plans to cover a number of Star Wars films still. Can't wait to hear from all the Star Wars fans on YouTube about that.
Yeah. And I can't wait to talk about and react live with you guys to season 1 of Heated Rivalry, episode by episode. So
We're not covering that.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, it's best you don't. It's best you don't.
Fair enough. Well, this episode may be longer than the film itself, Anton. That doesn't happen very often on this podcast.
Oof. Man, we'll see what happens. That's that I think that's our rule that it can't be, so we'll see.
Just trim out just entire sections.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens in the edit. But Ivan, great having you back. We're going to have you on soon again. I don't know what for yet, but we'll figure it out. That is it for this edition of Why Wasn't It Better? Thanks for listening and see you next time.